In the past, I have made several videos that reference the fact that the FCCs, which is an arm of the United States government, does not really do very much when it comes to enforcing their own rules on CB radio, ham radio, and GMRS. Pretty much making CB radio, ham radio, and GMRS like the wild, wild west. And forgive me, I'm going to read from my notes because I don't want to misspeak and then have to delete a bunch of stupid comments from all of the pedantic idiots suffering from dumbtism. Now, it is true that in the last 12 years or so, the FCC's, an agency of the United States government, has executed a few enforcement actions for minor things like repeater jamming or transmitting without a license. However, according to the United States government's own public records, in the last 12 years or so, the FCC's, an arm of the United States government, have executed only about 10 of this type of enforcements, and most of those amounted to nothing more than a mean letter sent by certified mail, which demonstrates to all of us loyal subjects of the United States government, yet again, that our government is a loving and a just government when it comes to showing compassion and taking care of all of its loyal subjects. And the United States government even demonstrates its transparency and openness by making all of the FCC's enforcements public in the FCC's enforcement database, online and available to all of us subjects of the United States government to access freely and openly. So then, if the FCC's is not driving around in black vans with big antennas on the roof, tracking down criminals using boofwang-type radios, then what exactly does the FCC's do with all of our taxpayer dollars? First of all, the FCC's is not funded by our tax dollars. Unlike the rest of the United States government, the FCC's is entirely self-funded. This means that instead of using U.S. government taxpayer dollars, the FCC's gets its money from doing FCC's kind of things, like selling and auctioning off frequency allocations and collecting licensing fees and issuing fines to the businesses that fuel our economy. And there are a few things that the brave men and women of the FCC's arm of the U.S. government does do quite well. Such things as keeping track of who can use what radio frequencies and what those radio frequencies can be used for, and making sure that all of the important radio frequencies can be used as intended. For example, if there was no arm of the U.S. government ruling over these things, watching over-the-air television could be a problem. Using your cell phone would be futile, and forget about the police being dispatched to stand there and watch mostly peaceful protests. And without the U.S. government controlling the airwaves, you can forget about things like air traffic control. And let us not forget that the men and women of the FCC's arm of the U.S. government are the first line of defense against things like naughty words or accidentally being able to see Janet Jackson's boobie on television. And of course, most importantly, over the last year or two, the FCC's arm of the United States government has made huge strides in fighting the war on pirate radio stations. I'm not really sure why the U.S. government cares so much about fighting pirate radio stations, but make no mistake, the FCC's arm of the U.S. government has been making huge progress in stamping out the scourge of unauthorized pirate radio stations. And of course, let us not forget the United States government push for full nationwide 5G coverage. Without the groundbreaking work of the brave men and women at the FCC's, it would not be possible for our dear leaders to bathe every single subject of the United States government in 5G radio waves. But ladies and gentlemen, even with all of this praise, this agency of the United States government is not perfect, and whilst the responsibilities of the FCCs is fighting telephone and text spamming and robocalls, which is probably one of the highest priority issues for most of us subjects of the United States government. If you actually own a telephone, you probably already know that the U.S. government is not doing a great job at that. The FCC has pulled the plug on a few robocaller outfits here and there, but most of us loyal subjects of the United States government would probably say that they could do a better job. So even with its imperfections, let us all take a moment to recognize the brave men and women on the front lines of the war against pirate radio and robocallers, and for making at least some of our radio waves safe, family-friendly, and usable for all the loyal subjects of the United States government, once again demonstrating to each and every one of us precisely just how much the United States government is of the people, by the people, and for the people.